I hear Jeremy arguing with the dogs in the other room. It's cracking me up. Commentary question: is it better for commentators to be heard in the venue or only on stream? There's no commentary on DH Dallas in the venue. That's an interesting one. The thing about commentary, whether it should be pumped to the venue or not, completely up to the event. Combo Breaker, I think it's great because the commentators are in the crowd with everybody else. So for that particular instance, it's great. The way it works for me in my head is it's fine if it's to the crowd and it's fine if it's not to the crowd. There's just different skills and ways you have to commentate depending on if it's to the crowd or not. So if it's to the crowd, like the way you have to get excited and everything and talk to them and like interact with them is a different feeling than if it's just to the stream at home. So Evo, for instance, they used to pump the audio out to the audience. So they would have feedback or echo, or there'd be extra noise from the commentators in the venue. So then they changed it up so that instead of doing it like that, there's two sets of commentators for top 8 in the arena. So for instance, last year for Tekken, Eris and Mark were on the Twitch, and then into the crowd was Rip and Steve, and they were on the mics, and they were like, everybody, you guys enjoying this Tekken? Make some noise. And they would do this, and the crowd like, rah. If you're Eris and Mark, you're not pumped to the crowd, so what you'd say is, hey, everybody, thanks for watching at home. I hope you've been enjoying Evo, you know, that kind of shit. If you're in the crowd, pumped to everybody, you're like, you guys liking this shit? Let me hear it. And then they just go crazy. There's different skills to run each. And yeah, Ryan says, it took me multiple times of doing commentary that was live to get used to it. I used to hate it. Now I don't care. What the analyst does is say things that the crowd will obviously be like, oh, that's smart. That makes sense. And you do stuff for the stream. But when you're pumped to the crowd, the things you have to do is be funny and be relatable and interact with the people around you. And then the person who's with you should be pumping up the crowd because that's their job. It's not Ryan's job. Can you imagine Ryan Hunter? All right, everybody make some noise. Like, it's not his job. It's not my job either. I'm not going to be the one doing that. As far as saying stuff like analysis that the players could hear or anything like that, I think that it's you just deliver it like it's normal no matter what. Because most of the time you're wearing headphones, and if they can hear your analysis, because they're not wearing the headphones or whatever, then that's a choice up to them, whether they want to do that or not. Because your analysis could help them or hurt them. I feel like the players could be listening to your analysis and be like, what the fuck? Why would I do that? And then they get hit by some other shit because they're distracted by it. So it's like, you know, it's up to them. It is a different experience though. And you have to just convince yourself that that's the right thing to do. Like for me, I'll talk about the player, especially like, you know, Punk doesn't wear headsets on stage usually. I'll talk about Punk when he is up there. Like, this guy Punk thinks he's so good. You can see that smile on his face and he starts laughing and stuff. I'll be like, man, he thinks he's so good. And I start saying stuff because I know that he's one of those players that will react to it. When I was pumped to the crowd as an analytical commentator, the way I was thinking was like, okay, when a move is blocked and they don't punish it or something like that, and I won't bring it up between matches because that's when they could listen really easily. So I'll say it in the match, and like when their headphones on or when they're not on the stage, like I don't want to bring it up too much. You got to be a little weird about it. You got to think about it in a different way. But now I'm just like, fuck it. I'm going to say whatever I'm going to say. It doesn't matter what it is. Because then somebody will be like, why the fuck didn't the commentator say he could punish it with this? And then you're like, well, shit. Do I say stuff that's like intentionally maybe not right or like not the full information because I'm worried about the players, or do I just deliver it how I'm supposed to deliver it? And for me, I'm just like, fuck it, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. And if the players hear it and it helps them or it doesn't help them or it hurts them, either way, right? It doesn't matter to me. You just deliver your best performance. Whatever happens outside of it is what happens. There's one thing that a lot of commentators will say like, oh, he did the wrong combo there and like hit it hard, or oh, he did this wrong or something. I think it's very important to point out mistakes, but not to hammer them in. You also, as a commentator, a lot of times will bring up the reasons why the mistake could have happened. Perhaps he's like, oh, well, this character, you know, has this thing about them, so maybe they were looking for that, or maybe their mind was looking for a certain thing, so they weren't ready to confirm into that. Or you have to do a little bit of both. You have to do a little bit of this mistake happened, but also it could have happened because of this. This could have been the reason. And maybe he was looking for a counter hit confirmed, so when it hit regular hit, he wasn't ready for what he was doing. So that's why the mistake was made. And you won't know those things unless you know the game well. So that's part of being an analytical commentator, is knowing against that character, when they're crouching and counter hit, this combo works. But when they're crouching and it's non-counter hit, or they're standing, it doesn't work. So that's why, you know, maybe he was looking for this or this or that or this. As an analytical commentator, you got to break down boom, boom, boom. And you have to know those things for each character, each matchup. Those things help give you extra context to like validate mistakes and also talk about what the players are looking for on the screen. If you're just that guy that's like, oh man, his combo was bad. He did a bad combo. He messed that up. He's dropping everything. God, like he's missing all this, this, and that. The worst is when commentators say stuff like, I would have hit that, or I was ready for that, or like without any other context. You know, sometimes you say it, whatever. Like the one thing that commentators do that I like is when they say, that would have hit me. That would have hit everybody in this room. Shit like that. I think that's usually fine when it's like a crazy mix-up. But when people are like, I would have blocked, I would have hit, I would have, you know, that shit is like, shut the fuck up. It's not about you, dweeb. No one gives a shit about you. They're here to watch the players, and you're here to make them, like, their choices and decision making sound better or worse depending on how they're playing. No one gives a fuck about you. I think that that's an easy commentary trap to fall into, though. The, oh, he messed all this up, he sucks. You don't have like the extra context of like why these things are happening. The thing is that it's hard to know every situation for every game, for every character, so I understand. But I think that there's a way to do it where you're like, okay, well, I don't know for sure, so here's what's happening. Sometimes you legit don't know. You're like, I don't know why that happened there. And you got to be honest about it. Like, I don't know. Maybe that combo doesn't work on that character. I'm not sure. Then there are times where I feel like people go too simplistic and they move away from like doing any analysis because they just don't know it all. And they like don't want to pretend they don't know. So they're like, you know, they just like, they say shit like fucking super, super generic phrases and words for stuff that they don't know. How often do you hear, like, when someone doesn't know a character or a game they're commentating, it's like, nice, gets the hit. Like, no context of, oh, he clipped him low, or, oh, there was a mix-up in the string, or, oh, you know, I had to stop and think, Ans Woo's 69. Thanks very much for dropping the 4 months. Extra context is important. In fighting games, it is one of the most important skills you can learn to have good analysis during play-by-play. Because there's not a lot of time. Fighting games tend to be very fast and frantic. And because of that, you don't have a long time to sit down and be like, well, this, and that. Like a Dota match, it's 45 minutes. You have plenty of time to talk about item builds and why they're making decisions the way they're making decisions, why they skilled things in a certain way, how vision is working, or if they're clearing stuff, if they're not clearing stuff, like what's happening in this. You have time. 45 minutes is like half of a top 8 for Street Fighter. It's not one game. It's half of a top 8 almost. By then, you've already had 3 sets or 4 sets, and each one has 2 different players. Making important decisions about what you talk about in terms of analysis and play-by-play is huge. Yeah, imagine trying to do commentary for a card game when you don't know any of the cards. Oh man, that would be hard. How much do you feel getting good at commentating has improved your skill at actually playing? Specifically, your ability to analyze your opponent while actually playing. So the thing that's interesting, Ryan, is like, I don't know if my commentary getting better is what makes my play better, or if my play getting better makes my commentary better. Before I commentated, I was a player who was like super analytical and played lots of characters to study them. When I'd lose the characters, I would play them and learn them and figure them out, so that way I understood like what to do. One thing that I've noticed is that the more games that I've commentated and the more I've learned different fighting games and practice like doing on-the-fly analysis, the better I am at like categorizing and understanding what characters are doing. Because one thing about commentary is you have to figure out like what the both players are looking for very quickly, like what their characters want to do, what the specific player wants to do, and what situations are. Because there'll be times on commentary where stuff will come up and you're like, I've never seen that interaction between 2 characters. What was the intention versus what actually happened on the screen? What ends up happening there is I feel like because of commentary, you probably do get more comfortable with quickly figuring stuff out. I noticed that especially when I learn new games now, I'm like, that situation looks like this to me. And if I was on commentary, I probably would say that. Like, oh yeah, that looks like it's going to be this to me. So I think that the two are intertwined. Getting better at games will make your analysis on commentary, spotting things better. And also getting better at commentary and spotting things and pointing things out will make your play better because you have to do the same thing from that kind of perspective. I think the two things are combined. And I feel like most of the time, if you're not somebody who plays these games often or studies them as an analytical commentator, you will struggle to really give meaningful analysis. I think maybe like the only exception I would think of is Seth Killian, and his analysis to me is not really like in-depth game analysis. It's more like, yeah, Ryan said the same thing that I did, Seth. It's really like his understanding of player psychology and like the basics of just fighting game back and forth. In levels of analysis, there's one thing about Seth that he will always have above everybody else, which is his background means that he will just have like that understanding of psychology that you and I just won't have. I am, what's it called? The guy that's going to be like, this is game interaction versus player interaction versus like, you know, what happens between these two characters versus like the frame data of the situation. And that's not like the style that Seth is going to have ever, right? So there's always going to be that difference, but like he's not a common style. There's no one else like him. Unlike what most people say, there's not actually that many fighting game commentators who are like trying to be like super, super, super good at it and take it serious and do it full time. Like our genre is not as saturated as I think people maybe assume. There's nobody else that fits in his genre, you know? Somebody else was going to say, oh, somebody said, which co-commentator do you think best fits my style. Probably Steve for that reason. The thing about Steve is that Steve is just infectious energy, which is when I'm with him is great. It makes my energy like shoot up really, really high because I sound the same kind of way, I think. We have the same kind of like mindsets about everything, so we just like sync like that. It's very natural. Even if we haven't commentated together in like 4 months, which happens sometimes because we're both so busy, we sit down and when we commentate, we like catch up because we haven't seen each other in a while. We talk about the matches and we think the same shit about the same stuff. It just works, you know? I like commentating with a lot of people that I don't get to commentate with that much. I like commentating with Obama a lot, but we don't ever usually get to commentate, right? He's in Japan and I'm here. There is one thing about me that happens a lot now. It's a new phenomenon that I notice when people commentate with me. You know when people say when you play someone, sometimes they play the name instead of playing the matchup? I realize people do that with my commentary in a weird way. Some commentators, when they commentate with me, are like, oh yeah, Sajam's like very analytical, so I'm gonna be very analytical, and we're gonna like be very analytical together. But that's a problem when they're like a hype man. I sit down with like a hype man, and then they like want to be analytical with me, and I'm like, who the fuck's gonna get hype? So it's not gonna be you, it's gotta be me. So I think it happens to a lot of commentators where for some reason when they sit down with me, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna talk about the game. Let's keep this about the game. And I'm like, fuck that. Let's have some fun and like be exciting, you know? I'm trying to be exciting and have fun. It's not just about the analysis. It happens a lot. I don't know why that is, which is why I think I've gotten a lot better at doing exciting commentary because I've had a lot of this happen to me. And one of the things I talked about this on my stream before, one thing I realized I was horrible at 2 years ago was the winning moments. You know, when someone wins and you're like, and you know, this guy is your combo breaker 20 blah 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 champion, congratulations. Like that is one thing that I realized I was really bad at like 2 years ago. And then now because of that, when I commentate with hype guys who like want to be analytical with me, we can have fun and be analytical, but I can also do the big moments like that. Drunk Suika said, when are we commentating together? I'll be your hype man forever. I haven't done any Eunice commentary because people get very protective of shit like that very quickly. And I realized that for the Eunice community, it was way better. It was a much better idea if I didn't do any commentary. People get so protective, you know, they think I'm coming for their jobs. I have no interest in doing top 8s or doing top 6. I have no interest in any of that. I don't give a shit at all. Ryan says, I specifically asked for only pool commentary so I could try it. That's exactly how I feel. I would only want to do pool commentaries. Gatekeeping other commentators. How's the view from my ivory tower? You have to remember that I took less jobs. Remember, I've been giving away work. I'm not trying to steal it all. I've been doing the opposite. When's the last time you saw me do Tekken commentary? I'm not a Tekken commentator. You let these motherfuckers do it. I could do it if in a pinch, you know? If I had to MacGyver together some Tekken commentary, I can do some Tekken commentary, but let those motherfuckers do it. They're great at it. Tekken has like a really great spread of commentators. Maybe the best spread of commentators for any fighting game. The chat was freaking out when James was doing MK commentary. Well, he doesn't know MK that well. I know he's been playing it, but he's not that familiar with the game and the community. My favorite game to commentate? Maybe KI, or I like commentating Street Fighter. Street Fighter, I'm like very comfortable. I never feel like something comes up that I don't know. I've watched thousands of hours of the game. I'm so familiar with everything that's going to happen that it's like drilled into my brain. I know the players, the characters, like the matchups so well that like it's very hard for anything to show up and surprise me. When I listen to the Eunice commentary, this is what I think about it. The Eunice commentators know the players and the community incredibly well. They've known all of them since UNIL. They're familiar with all the characters they used to play. They know where they're from. They know like if they placed the tournaments and shit like that. They've got it. All the uni guys, like they know that shit. They're familiar. Their commentary fundamentals, like, you know, as terms of like experience and practice and stuff, is lower than like someone like Steve or me or someone who's done it everywhere around the world, everywhere. But their knowledge of the game and the community is so high that it's like, even if they have less practice than us, put those motherfuckers there, obviously, because they're only going to get better and better and better and better and better and better. So you just put them on the big stages so that when it comes to top 8 at EVO and they're like, this is your big moment at top 8 at EVO, they have had practice at, you know, Climax, the local events, offline sessions, Combo Breaker, CEO, EVO. You know, it just takes time and effort to get them there. There's a lot of versatile commentators in the FGC these days, yeah. You brought up KP, Ringe, TK, Sammy. They've all been doing a lot of games lately. The thing is about being a multi-game commentator is if you're an analyst, you have to tread carefully about where you're willing to go. The thing about me, Drunk Suika, and combining with people and figuring out how it works with pools is what I've realized is most of the time, it's just like fighting games where you just got to figure out what your commentator wants to do. Like this is my basic strategy. This is the B&B that I go for. This is like round start fight on Pool's commentary. If you don't know who you're with. What up, guys? Welcome to Sajam's Example Tournament 2019. It's a pleasure to be here all the way in Example Town, USA. Awesome. I'm joined here by, you know, Johnny Donuts, 69420. Johnny Donuts, how you doing, homie? And then you throw it to them and you see what they say. They're like, you know, I'm doing well, Sajam. It's a pleasure to be here. Johnny Donuts, 69420. And I've never been to this tournament, this imaginary made-up tournament Sajam's talking about, but it's cool so far. We have a lot of really good players. And then you're like, oh, shit. He knows there's a lot of good players. All right. And you're like, yeah, dude, I'm really excited for X and Y player. And then they're like, yeah, I'm excited for this player. And then they start talking and you get like the feel. You go back and forth and you feel how it sounds. And then when it jumps into the match, you say, all right, so we got our first match here. It's going to be, you know, Sasuke Uchiha versus Daigo Umehara. All right, we'll see if the Sharingan's going to be a big factor here. This is Curse Mark Sasuke, obviously, so it's not fully awakened. And we'll see how the match is going to go. Round start, Daigo backs up. He throws a bottle of alcohol at him. And then your co-commentator's like, well, the bottle of alcohol is plus 69 on... And you're like, perfect. Okay, so he's the analytical guy. This is good to know. He knows a lot about this shit. He's very familiar with this character. So then you're like, okay, I know that he's going to know this kind of stuff. And then you're like, okay, so now I can get excited when shit happens. And then you just start tossing it back and forth and you see like how the relationship's going to go. Ask them stuff and make them like see how they're interacting, see how they're talking, and then bounce off of that and feel like what they like, what they don't like. If a character comes on the screen and you get the sense they don't know too much about him, if you know about him, it's good to bring up stuff. If you get the sense that they just know all kinds of shit, but they're not that smooth, then you got to keep the smooth talking and the energy up and you let them be the nerd. You know what I mean? Like you have to detect what they're good at. If you know someone and you know what they're good at, then you can come up with strategies. When I commentate with Obama, I have strategies. I'm like, I know what Obama's good at. I know what he's bad at. I know what I need to do to make this motherfucker laugh or not laugh or enable him to say what he wants to say. You know what I mean? And it depends on what your skills are too. If you're versatile, if you're somebody who's an analyst, if you're excitable. Like Eunice, I would want to be with Tari probably. Or someone who just is like incredibly smart. Who just knows their shit super well. Because then I would just ask them questions and just be excited to be there. Not usually who I would want to pair up with in most situations is probably not the analyst who knows everything. Because for me, that's usually me. But then instead, I'm like, I don't have to worry about this. It doesn't matter what their stats are in every other category. In Eunice, I would want someone who's knowledgeable and who I can ask questions. That's who I would want. Because I could just translate it and then take that information and then regurgitate it in my own way that would be interesting, and I could just be excitable and have fun. Yeah, Brett Otari would probably be great. But we would have fun too. If I was a drunk Suika, it'd be fun too, because then I would just have goofy high energy and just let him also have goofy high energy. And then we can talk about the match and talk shit and have fun too. It just depends on who you run into. If it was like me and Ryan, I know Ryan is very knowledgeable and he's a very smart, put together person. Eunice is not the game that he knows as much about as like these other games, but that's like the style he is. So that's why I'm going to pair for that. I'm like, all right, this is it. What's my worst matchup? I feel like the thing is that these days, I don't think I have too many bad matchups. It's pretty hard for me to run into somebody who is as appreciated as Zenahat. Thanks very much for dropping the 3 months with a Twitch Prime. Bad matchups for me are rare, unless they're a bad matchup for everybody. There are some matchups that are unwinnable no matter who you are. But for me, usually most of my matchups are fine. Oh, you're trying to get me to talk shit? What do you want me to say? Giuna? I like commentating with Giuna. Giuna's great. Giuna has a very particular Giuna-esque style. He has the style of someone who's been forced to do a lot of shit that he doesn't know and he doesn't care about, but he has to because it's paying his bills. I am the exact same way, so I can appreciate his level of knowledge and everything it's working with. Giuna has a few things that I really like that he does too. One, he's very honest about the shit he knows. He's never fucking tells you, that was definitely this. He's like, what the fuck was that? I don't know what's happening. He'll say that shit all the time. He says that all the time in Tekken. He's like, I don't know what the hell that was. What the hell is that move? I've never seen that in my life. He has good energy. He is familiar with a lot of the players in the games or in the scene and stuff like that. He's really good at that, as long as you get him in the right environment. It's just he's old nowadays. You can't overwork the man. His best performances are when he doesn't have to run the stream and fucking wrangle talent and sit there and do commentary for 12 hours solo, because obviously no one sounds good at that point. You just sound like an insane person. I'm telling you, when you've done Jenga, I've done Overwatch, Jenga, fucking Naruto, One Piece, Burning Blood. Like when you've done shit like this, you understand how it works. Didn't we commentate some dumb shit? I'm sure we have, Flo. That's the thing is, you understand. The thing is, your stream has equipped you for the dumb shit, I feel like, right? Like, you're prepared. You know how it works. I could have been making big OWL bucks. You don't know how close to being right you are. But sometimes you have to remember that doing what you like is more important than the big bucks. I only like commentating things that I like to do usually. I only do dumb shit if it's fun. The thing is, you just can't say wrong shit. You just have to say shit that's not sort of wrong, but like, if you don't know, you got to be honest. You're like, I don't know. Fucking, that shit is scary. The thing is like, no one expects me to know shit about Third Strike. So I only say what I know for sure. And then anything I don't know, I'm just like, all right, well, fuck, I don't know what the fuck that was. You just like, I have no fucking clue. Especially because it's good if you're an analytical commentator and you're like, I don't know what that was. That's actually really sick, because when an analytical commentator is like, I don't know what the fuck just happened, that shit is tight, because you're like, damn, he usually knows what the fuck's happening. You know who has recognized that more than anybody is David. I feel like I was listening to David commentate MK at Combo Breaker, and I was listening to him commentate Street Fighter at DreamHack, and I realized that David has taken the entirety of not saying wrong shit on commentary to like I feel like that is his number one goal on commentary. You know what I mean? Like almost all the phrases or analysis he delivers is open to interpretation. And because of that, I feel like oftentimes he'll say things that don't mean anything. Garrus does walk up forward 2-on-2 to bait a throw and it counter hits someone. And he says, instead of saying like, oh, walks up and delays the forward 2 to catch a tech, right? He says, he's coming in. Right? That's what he'll say instead. Just like, I'll say, thank you very much for dropping the $10. Like, that's like the David style. You know what I mean? He's, oh, he's moving in. Like, that's like David's like phrase now. And then like, instead of saying like, he gets the whiff punish, oh, he was there. That's like what he'll say instead, right? Punk walked up and like frame trapped him. And he was like, walk up, down strong. Walk up, down strong. And he just goes, the timing when it hits. You know what I mean? He's just like dropping these like very safe, almost nothing phrases, and I think it's a purpose. It's a choice made for two reasons. One, you don't have to study the same way you used to, because you don't have to drop the same kind of analysis if you're doing that. You just keep it super like the timing instead of whatever you're gonna say, right? So like, he doesn't have to study as much, because I mean, those are very basic universal phrases. They bail you out of whatever you're getting into. And they mean that people who are picking apart the analysis, like, oh, he's not actually this and that there, you can't pick that apart. There's nothing there to pick apart. It's like a very safe phrase. Like, he was ready? That's what he says. He says that all the time. He was ready? Oh, God. This guy, come on. Those are all Davidisms. My problem with it is when I listen to it, I'm like listening to his commentary and I'm like, he's not saying anything. There's like not a lot of substance there. And I think that used to be the opposite. It used to be David had way more substance. And I wonder how much of that is time commitment. I wonder how much of that is like a purposeful choice to change the way he commentates so that people can't pick it apart, and also so that new players don't get lost in any of the shit he's saying. Because to have good analysis that's understandable takes a lot of like particular thought process of how do I explain this in a concise and simple way. So it's definitely a style that's probably good for him, because he plays he like commentates quite a few games. And he probably doesn't have the time that someone like me had. Like, I have way more time to study these games because it's my job. Like, he has a job and he has to do this shit on the side. So that's like his strategy when pulled back. It's definitely a change in style, a purposeful change in style that he has made to his commentary. But yeah, that's why when people say we sound similar, I think if you think about the vocal tone, maybe, but if you think about the things we say, it's very different. Well, the thing is, you say like he knows more about MK, but he's not going to flex that knowledge no matter what. Like when he describes Baraka to you, all right, tell me what character you think I'm describing here. Yeah, he's got good mobility, the footsies, the spacing, he's got a solid projectile. You just do all the things. Who is he talking about when he says that? That's a very common David phrase. He can just be where he wants to be. Everybody in the cast. Okay, so now you figured it out. Yep, all right. David has smart strategies. Except he wasn't talking about D'Vorah. How do you know? What if that's who I was thinking about? Well, the thing is, I know you could do that for any commentator to break down the strategies. I can't tell you Eris's strategies. Eris is a complicated amalgamation of strategies. Have I commentated with him since we changed the strats? Yeah. When I commentate with him, what essentially happens is he says, he always move it in. And what I say is, yeah, he did forward 2-on-2 to beat the throw. I'm just like, whatever he says, I'm like gonna repeat back in whatever way I would say. Should we, during commentator, outline game-specific things or mechanics? That's a good question. As good as Deep Meat, who's hit me with a subscription. Thanks very much. I think it's important to do that. So the thing that my thought process on that in commentary is that, particularly in pools, it's actually useful during most of the tournament to break down like the basics of whatever game mechanics you have. So saying something like, yeah, he has this, this, and that resource that you can see at this position on the screen is like, it's good. It's not a bad thing to do as long as you cover it. You tap it. You don't need to hammer it, I feel like, a lot of the times. This is how sparking works. Sparking is a mechanic that you get once per game in Dragon Ball, unless, of course, you summon Shenron. What sparking does is gives you 1.x% at more damage than this, and it gives you this much at level 2, and it gives you that. You don't need anything fancy like that, right? You can just tap it real lightly with, oh yeah, Sparking Blast works like that. You can see the indicator under the health bar is glowing like red. You don't have to get crazy, but I think that stuff is very useful, particularly when it's like early in the tournament. There's pools matches where maybe the matchups aren't that good. You have one really strong player versus another player who's kind of just like okay, and you know it's going to be a beatdown. That's a good time to explain mechanics or characters or things that are going on. I think as long as you can tap it on the head and just be like, this is how that works. Yeah, he used Veil off in that combo right there to strip him from having CS, so that way he wouldn't have to worry about it on the next mix-up. And then the mix-up works, and you're like, see? If you had CS right there, you could have woken up CS, and the mix-up would have been scary or whatever, right? You would have had Vorpal, and that would have been bad. Like, just a little tap here and there goes a long way, I think, in helping people, especially because if you're a Eunice commentator, lots of people are interested in the game, and they don't know what the fuck it is. They just know that other people like it. All they know about Eunice is, like, everybody else thinks that this is neat. This seems neat. I should check it out. And they're looking at the screen, and they're like, I don't know what the fuck's happening. There's 7 gauges. There's some banging music in the background. I don't know what's going on. If someone explained Grid to me earlier, I would have gotten into the game way earlier. Yeah, Grid is cool. I think it's a really, really dope mechanic. The back and forth of Grid is, in my head, one of the most neat mechanics. Yeah, Tug of War. Yeah, it's really cool. It's like the combo system of KI. I think the combo system of KI is complicated, but once I started saying that the combos in KI are sandwiches, then it became so much easier, because everybody immediately, when you say combos in KI are sandwiches, they're like, what the fuck do you mean? And it makes them laugh. Like, they're not sandwiches. I'm like, they absolutely are sandwiches. And you start explaining it, you know, in like a fun way, then people are like, they're in there. They're like, okay, combos in KIs are sandwiches. There's the opener, which is one piece of bread. There's the end of the combo, which is the other piece of bread. And combos need to have these two things, or they're not a real sandwich. You know what I mean? Whatever you put in the middle, which are meats, which are normals or doubles, you can have meat in there. Or you can keep it a veggie-free option and just do linkers, which are special moves. But the sandwich is going to be bread, meat, lettuce, meat, lettuce, meat, lettuce. Like, you know, bread. Close it and you smash the sandwich together, and that does 39%, and that's the end of the combo. Do you want to make a very small sandwich? You know what I mean? You could do it however you want. That sounds like an awful sandwich. It did 39% and it knocked you down in the corner. The sandwich seemed fine to me. That's a dorky way to describe it, but do you know how combos in KI work now? That they're sandwiches with different sections in them. You get an oki after your sandwich. There's different ways to end the sandwich too, because sometimes the bread that you put on the end of the sandwich is going to be different kinds of bread. So sometimes you have sourdough. Sourdough builds you meter. It's called a battery ender. That shit's tight. You want something hearty, you know, that's going to sop things up? You can go with like, you know, rye bread. Yeah, rye bread is like, yeah, it's at the end of that. It's hearty. That's your damage ender. The pumpernickel, that's definitely a wall splat. Splats you against the wall. And you can get more after, because after you have pumpernickel, you're like, this is not enough. I can't handle this. You want something versatile, right? That it leads into something else. You can go with wheat bread. That's an exchange ender. It puts you on the opposite side. It's a side switch. The carb-free option. The carb-free option is to open your combo. You hit somebody, right? You have one piece of bread. You do a very small piece of something, anything. Just like F and Magnets, FGC is a small piece of this Twitch Prime. Thanks very much. You open it up. You do something small here, right? Maybe just a little tip-tap. One piece of turkey or one little, you know, maybe some kind of veggie on there. You don't even put another slice of bread. You stop the combo. You stop building a sandwich, and then you throw them. You don't have to go crazy with your sandwich. Yes, wheat is the side switch. You don't want to go for the side switch because it does less damage. You know, you don't get to like get crazy anything off of it, but it's good for you to get out of the corner. So I guess I'll use wheat. It's good for me. Telling you, KI combos are sandwiches. I knew it was a good analogy because I taught it to Eris and he understood it. That's how you know it was an effective teaching mechanism. Can you imagine trying to teach Eris how KI combos work? I knew I was up for a dangerous task, and I prepared for it. I knew Eris would know sandwiches. Absolutely. I knew that was his weakness. I was like, there's only like 4 kinds of food he ever talks about, and sandwiches are one of them. I did say that too. I was like, we're building hot dog sandwiches. This is how this works. Got your hot dog, and the next thing is going to be mustard, and then you got... You know, this is what you have to do to teach people. I talked about this in Gerald's video. When it comes to teaching people, you have to really trick them sometimes into enjoying it. And if you can make the learning part fun, then that's half the battle. The other half is explaining it in a nice little concise way before you lose their attention. You don't have very long. These fucking kids are trying to play Fortnite and dance and fucking dab on Thanos. You know, you got to do it quick before you lose them. The point of all this is to say, I've been really thinking like I should do a lecture on commentary somewhere. I was thinking maybe I should do a commentary talk at EVO or something. You know, they're doing panels this year. I don't know if an EVO panel would be a good idea. I'm so busy at EVO that the last thing on my mind is during a break at EVO, I should go talk more. There's a lot of questions about commentary. I get messages and tweets daily asking for commentary advice. I have a lot of it on my YouTube channel. There's a lot, and I answer any questions people ask about commentary on here. Mostly because I think right now is, if you are interested in doing commentary, it is a good time. Because the amount of people who do it full time and the amount of people who can sustain themselves off of it is increasing. And the amount of like people who take it very, very, very seriously and are like treating it like this is, you know, what I want to do is not that high. There's not a ton. Like, we have a lot of commentators that are mid to solid level in fighting games, but we could always use more for almost every game, you know? It's like about a handful of people I can think of for a lot of game that can do an okay job and like get the job done. And some games are struggling with the amount of commentary options they have available. I think the best commentary group, like the overall group, is probably Tekken. Because you think about Eris, Mark, Steve, Rip, MYK, Rixta, Spag, Reinhardt, Bubsy. They're all really solid. Just like off the top of my head, my face, when most of them are from SoCal, turns out practicing every single week on a place where lots of people watch is useful. And all of them are streamers too, and they've been around for a long time. The best way to practice commentary is to do it as much as possible, as humanly possible. Just in general for fighting games. How could anybody have more practice than me? I do it on my stream 4 hours a day, every single day of the week. And if I'm not doing it, it's because I'm traveling and commentating somewhere. And I go to my local every week. How could it be possible that anybody could have more practice than me in doing it? And I'm still like, man, there's all this shit that I need to practice for commentary. I need to study. And like, that's what I'm telling you. The more practice, the better. Tekken requires a PhD. It takes a lot of time. Like everything, you just drill it into your body until you're so comfortable doing it that you're like, all right, I can do this. How do I keep my voice from sounding so smooth and sultry? You just break your nose twice, and then you have this deep R there. And how many of them are analysts? And how many of them have the time and ability to study and know every single character and interaction in the game? There's not that many, right? It's the same kind of way for like every single game, even Street Fighter, which has lots of dedicated commentators because there's a tour and there's stability in the commentary because there's like so many opportunities and options to do it. How many people know like, oh yeah, I know exactly like every single thing about every situation? Okay, this is a good question. Suika says, actually, I want to branch from Eunice commentary. Should I step into the established games or try and jump on Samcho or Granblue Versus and take a spot early? My answer is neither. I think you should figure out what fighting games you really enjoy and like and commentate those, no matter what they are. I think that's my advice to anybody. That's my advice, because I think if you don't and you try to do anything else, you're like, hey, what up? Hey, what up, fellow kids? I love Tekken 7. Everybody will be like, no, you fucking don't. You know what I mean? You got to just figure it out and be like, yeah, this is what I like doing, and that's what I'm going to do. So I would just try out, you know, you probably have other fighting games you're interested in, like, that's what I would think about, right? When Dragon Ball is coming out, I was like, I'm definitely going to try this game, and we'll see how it goes. And we'll see if, you know, if I like it and I'm going to be interested in it or not. I didn't know if I was going to love the game or not. When it came out, I really enjoyed it, and I like played a lot of it, and I thought it was really fun. So I started doing commentary for it. I practiced a shit ton on my stream. I wrote documents about how I should approach the commentary and like You know, be ready just like I'm ready to thank Kaguru for the 19 months. Thanks very much for the Twitch Prime, homie. I wrote documents about like prep work. I talked about it on my stream, the prep work I did, my mindset going into it. Like, you know, once I knew I was going to do it, I took it very serious. And that was like what I wanted to do. So as far as I was concerned, I was like, you know, I'm putting all this time and effort and energy into being good at Dragon Ball commentary because I like the game and I'm interested in it. If I tried it and I didn't like it, then, you know, that was the same thing. A lot of people were asking me if I was going to commentate Soul Calibur when it came out. And I was like, I don't know, I'll try it. And if I like it, I'll think about it. A lot of people, it's always like that with every game. Everybody asks me, are you interested in doing this game or that game? You know, I try it. And if I dig it, then I'm with it. And if I don't, then I don't. The thing is, people can smell the phoniness on anybody. If you show up and try to do some shit you don't really like or jam with, they're going to be able to feel it. They'll be able to sense it. They'll be like, he doesn't like this shit. He's just phoning it in. Let's hear those Sam Show impressions. Look, Most, I said it earlier. People say if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So I'm not going to say anything about me trying Sam Show. My favorite commentator to listen to and who's my favorite commentator to co-commentate with, Steve is probably my favorite to co-commentate with. Listen to is, I guess it depends on the game. Yipes is fun to commentate with. The thing about Yipes is that Yipes is easy to commentate with. He knows a lot about, he's one of the hype men that knows so much about the game. So the thing about Yipes is that you can lean on him for anything. You know what I mean? Like knowledge or hype or whatever it is. Steve is similar. Steve is very familiar with the game and the community, and his knowledge is infectious. In Marvel 3, once a Phoenix Wright level 3 went off and Steve said he did it. I got the paperwork to prove it. You're late on the child support. Steve is too... Dude, his improvs are too good sometimes. Like, the shit he says... Steve is secretly actually like the best Marvel 3 commentator, but he just like never got enough chances to do that game. He knows so much about the characters and lore and versus games. He's like so good at doing anything fast-paced like that. I love Steve on. I really wish Steve and I were like a duo back in Marvel 3 because I think we would have loved doing Marvel 3. Him and I would have had so much fun on that game. That's why I think Steve and I like doing Dragon Ball also, because it's like another franchise we both really like and versus game, you know? So we're both with it.